From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. The Workers' Party presidential candidate, Fernando Haddad, has casted his vote in Sao Paulo. Haddad was joined by his wife as he voted in a polling station in the Brazilian International School. Afterwards, he said what is at stake in this process of democracy.
What is at stake today is democracy in Brazil. I can say this is a very big day for the country. We are at a crossroads. The vision of the nation that we represent has gained ground in the last week. The nation is in danger, democracy is in danger, and individual freedoms are in danger. We represent a return to and a deepening of the vision of democracy, of freedoms, and of the fight against inequality. I think Brazil has woken up in the last few days with a lot of people in the streets defending this vision. So I'm very hopeful of the results.
Haddad's supporters have gathered outside his polling station as they waited for him before he voted. They shouted his name and the slogan "Haddad for President" while holding white and red roses.
I voted for the Workers' Party because the Workers' Party gave our communities houses and implemented many social programs for our people.
I voted for number 13, for the Workers' Party, because of their social programs. I believe they're very interesting. I live in one of their housing projects. That's why I voted for the Workers' Party.
I'm voting for democracy, because we all have rights and we all deserve a government that works for all of us, and not for a minority. So I'm going to vote for Haddad, for number 13. Everybody in my house is number 13.
The Workers' Party vice presidential candidate, Manuela Dávila, has voted as well. The state lawmaker from the Communist Party of Brazil cast her ballot at a polling station in Porto Alegre. Dávila said she is convinced that the Workers' Party can win this election. Candidate Jair Bolsonaro has also voted in a polling station in Rio de Janeiro. Accompanied by his wife, the far-right candidate has voted in the school of Rosa da Fonseca. Heavy security guarded the site as the far-right candidate voted. On his part, Haddad is scheduled to vote around midday local time. And as he was leaving the voting station, Bolsonaro was met by a crowd of cheerful supporters as they waved the Brazilian flag. They tried to approach him on his way to his car.
I voted for Bolsonaro, of course, because I want a better country. I believe in him. More security, more peace and love, less corruption. Bolsonaro, that's right, and he's going to win.
A night before the vote, Bolsonaro told his supporters elections are not yet won, and for this, he needs their vote. Bolsonaro addressed the voters on a Facebook Live just a night before Election Day. He also spoke about the former Supreme Court judge, Joaquim Barbosa, who said he will support the Workers' Party in this vote.
The elections are not won. We have to fight until the last moment. We cannot relax. I know I have difficult voting. Do the sacrifice, leave early from home. We will vote.
People in Brazil's capital, Brasilia, are also casting their votes as the election day moves forward. Voters arrive to polling centers early in the morning and will remain open until 5 p.m. in the afternoon. Brazilians are voting in one of the most divisive presidential runoffs in decades. Earlier, we spoke with Brazilian feminist activist Bianca Bregulio about what people are expecting from this electoral process.
We have a history about the military going against the people and actually menacing us. But I don't think he's going to have time to do that. Over the past 15 days, we have seen popular movement and people on the streets talking to each other. So I think there's going to be a popular demand for freedom and our constitutional rights.
We go back to our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Brian Mir, who is at a polling station in the city center to give us some update on the election. Hi, Brian. Thank you for joining us again.
Hi, how are you?
You just went to the city center. Do you see a difference in the number of Haddad and Bolsonaro supporters here?
Well, I'm here right now at Mackenzie University, which is the second busiest polling center in Sao Paulo. There are 18,000 people coming here to vote today. And what I notice is a slight majority of people who appear to be supporting Haddad. People with 13 stickers or Ellie Now t-shirts on. But I am seeing more people with like yellow t-shirts, pictures of the colors of Brazil, which is what the Bolsonaro supporters are wearing in the polls today.
Now, Brian, how has the day unfolded so far? Have you heard about any irregularities?
Yes, I have. This morning, the CUT Labor Union Federation sent out a warning that Bolsonaro supporters had bombarded the social media with a fabricated story accusing Fernando Haddad of pedophile. And so there was a lot of news going out, verifying that was not a true story and things like that. But it just shows that the dirty tricks haven't stopped. The dirty tricks that the electoral court have processed Bolsonaro for already, involving illegal use of social media.
Now, Haddad voted and is hopeful to take this election. What is the mood in Sao Paulo as both candidates have casted their votes?
Well, I think that after the first election, a lot of the Haddad supporters and PT supporters entered in despair. But in the last week, as support for him has surged, there's a mood of kind of cautious optimism among the PT supporters. And I feel like the Bolsonaro supporters just think it's theirs. They're acting like it's theirs. They're going to win it. They're acting like they already won.
Now, why is Sao Paulo such an important city for this election?
Well, Sao Paulo is the economic motor of Brazil. The greater Sao Paulo area has 10% of the country's population living in it. And it tends to be a little bit conservative. So if Haddad is winning in Sao Paulo, as the polls have shown, it's a good sign for the rest of the election for the PT party.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for this update.
Thanks a lot.
And Bolivian President Evo Morales has congratulated the people of Brazil in their election day. On Twitter, Morales said he hoped this day will be a democratic celebration. He also congratulated the people who are voting today in this second round to elect their next president. Now let's take a look at the Workers' Party candidate, Fernando Haddad.
The Workers' Party candidate entered the race late after the Supreme Court barred Lula from running. Fernando Haddad is an academic, a former mayor of Sao Paulo, and a former minister of education. He helped to found 18 universities, 173 school campuses, and 360 federal institutes. The Workers' Party also established an education policy to give more opportunities for black and indigenous people. Among his proposals are the abolition of the labor reform, a reform on social investment, and privatization policies imposed by President Temer. Also, a reform of the state system to establish a truth commission to investigate crimes of the dictatorship and the development of a basic food income.
Let's look more closely at the Social Liberal Party candidate, Jair Bolsonaro. He has been in first place in all the polls since former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva was banned from running.
He is a 62-year-old former captain in the army who defends the military dictatorship and considers torture legitimate. He has become notorious for his sexist and homophobic remarks, and he has presented himself as a messiah to save the Brazilian people. Bolsonaro has served 7 terms as a member of the lower house of the Brazilian Congress. His political platform includes a strong security agenda. It includes lowering the age of criminal responsibility to 16 and spending more on the police and intelligence services. He's also in favor of privatizing public companies.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Over 1,000 people have marched in a silent caravan migrant towards the border of Guatemala and Mexico. The march took place in the municipality of Tecún, the last stop before crossing the Mexican side. People participating have faced security forces as they arrived to the border. Meanwhile, the first group of the migrant caravan has reached the Mexican town of San Pedro Tanaptepec in the state of Oaxaca. The group was held for hours when a police blockade prevented them from leaving the town of Arriaga in Chiapas state. Residents offer food, water, and other supplies to the thousands of people heading to the U.S. border. The migrants' next stop will be Santiago Nitepec, about 54 kilometers away.
The Mexican people extended a hand and helped us a lot. We thank the Mexican people.
Meanwhile, the Mexican president has announced that the government will offer migrants medical care, education for their children, and access to temporary work as long as they stay in the two southern states.
To support you, the government of Mexico is launching the plan, You're in Your Home. While in Mexico, you can receive medical attention and even send your children to school. You will also have a temporary official identification to do the procedures that you need while you regularize your immigration status.
However, the migrants have rejected the proposal. They believe that the majority of those who will apply will be rejected and deported.
This is definitely a strong mandate. We all know that. It's more of the same, which is repressing, containing migration. There's no solution there.
And a rally in support of the migrant caravan has taken place in Honduras, but those who took to the streets were faced with police repression.
Early on Friday morning, a caravan in solidarity with the Honduran migrants arrived in Tegucigalpa, and they are demanding the resignation of Juan Orlando Hernandez.
We couldn't remain silent. We couldn't stand idly by. We need to stand up for our brothers who were driven out of the country.
Protesters walked for 3 days to get to Tegucigalpa. They want to return to democracy, something they say was lost after the current president was illegally re-elected.
I think this is the moment for Hondurans to stand up for ourselves and demand that this illegitimate government return power to the people.
In the afternoon, more demonstrations were held for the same reason, to demand the resignation of Juan Orlando Hernandez, but the people were met with police repression and attacked with tear gas.
When we arrived, there were 4 army squadrons along with police. They were ready to repress us.
In the wake of the attacks, they called on the international community to suspend economic support to the current government.
We cover our faces so that we're not murdered tomorrow by Juan Orlando Hernandez goons, the usurper that stole the elections from Salvador Nasralla. We ask the international community to stop supporting this dictator. People are fleeing because there is no money, no opportunities in Honduras.
According to reports, Honduras spends over $18 million in weapons and ammunition, which is mainly used to repress protests. Meanwhile, extreme poverty has reached nearly 50%.
Thousands of families have been evacuated in Paraguay due to heavy flooding. Authorities have declared a state of emergency for 90 days. Families have been relocated in shelters across the country. Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley has delivered the keynote address to the annual conference of Barbados Labour Party. Speaking at the Lodge School on the second day of the 80th conference, she presented her 5-month report card. Mottley called on supporters to stay focused and to say that the party was given a mandate like no other in the history of the country. The Labour Party took office last May 24th, winning all 30 seats in Parliament. 13 muralists are taking part in the urban art festival La Puerta del Sur in Chile.
The urban festival La Puerta del Sur is taking over abandoned public spaces. This festival aims at bringing art out of museum halls and into the streets in a bid for the creation of interesting content and social criticism.
The idea began with a conversation among several painters. We were painting all over the world and for different festivals. The idea with this festival is not only to paint, but to go beyond the paint and create something like what we are creating now. We are changing the visual landscape with the help of several artists that are sharing their art with the city.
13 muralists painted more than 1,300 meters of walls and stones of the Mapocho River in capital Santiago, a space full of symbolism and history.
This river is a scar. It is a backbone in the city, but it is also a border of Santiago between the poor and the rich. This river has a lot of violence. Bodies were found here during the militia coup.
My parents left for exile. The stories of the military coup, popular unity, and this river are part of my life and my childhood.
The secret police of dictator Augusto Pinochet tortured and murdered people in the riverside, a painful practice that has continued.
Do you remember the case of the Colombian who got killed and was thrown here? Well, this river has accumulated all that is bad with this city. What we're doing here is just returning a little bit of love to the river through street art.
The Venezuelan-Chilean muralist Kalala has come back to return part of that love.
The mural that I came here to do represents a meeting between Venezuelan dancing demons and Chilean dancing demons. This is my way of explaining the encounter of my roots, of my history, my childhood, and all those stories that I have heard all of my life.
But he's not the only one. Peruvian muralist Olfer shows his own story as well.
The river has a mystique because they found an Inca mummy here, where the river begins. Above that, the Incas settled here because they reached these parts.
Everyone has united for this Latin American encounter. The Chilean poet Raúl Zurita reflects through his verses that will be engraved on the murals.
When everything is finished, these stones will remain. They will survive the waves, the centuries, and the dreams, just how the powerful and the stubborn hearts will last.
Stubborn like these artists that on the stones of the river they found a place to paint their best weapon.
More than 2 million people have attended the Day of the Dead parade in Mexico. Allegorical floats, giant puppets, the skull-face paint, and main characters from Mexican culture line up in the Paseo de la Reforma in Mexico City. Celebrated for third time in a row, this year's theme focused on migration with features African and Spanish migrants. The Mexican Day of the Dead celebrations are known worldwide, famous for their colorful traditions. We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur.
welcome back. At least 6 people have been killed and dozens wounded in Afghanistan when a suicide car bomb targeted a bus carrying police officers and civilians. The attack took place in the central city of Maidan Wardak when it was claimed that to be the Taliban who targeted a vehicle that was carrying people to their place of work near the city's military base.
In the morning, a bomb on a car exploded among civilians who were going to work near the gate of Maidan Wardak Central Base. The incident happened about 2 kilometers from the gate of the base, and unfortunately 24 civilians, including 2 militants, were wounded and 6 others killed.
The United Nations has warned that over 40 million people are at risk of famine in Yemen due to a Saudi-imposed blockade on Houthi port and Sana'a airport. The UN called for a humanitarian ceasefire around facilities involved in food aid distribution, but Saudi Arabia and its allies have ignored the call. According to the World Health Organization, nearly 10,000 people have been killed in Yemen and more than 56,000 injured since 2015.
The cases that we receive here in the hospital arrive in severe stages of disease, close to death. We do our job and try to bring them back to life. Some cases get better and some others get worse because they already suffer from malnutrition and got to the hospital too late.
Ireland has voted to leave an enforced constitutional ban on blasphemy in the latest secular reform for the Catholic country. The ban was overturned with 65% of voters in favor, following recent votes to allow abortion and same-sex marriage. The referendum corresponds with the presidential election, which saw incumbent Michael Higgins win a landslide second term, securing a 56% vote share in a race of 6 candidates. Thousands of Norwegians have taken to the streets in Oslo to protest against a NATO-led military exercises and calling for dialogue with Russia. People marched holding banners denouncing the military exercise and calling for peace between Norway and Russia. Anti-NATO protests were also organized on Saturday in Bergen, Norway's second largest city, and the southern city of Kristiansand.
We think that this is a threat to the Norwegian people, and we don't like this aggression towards Russia. We are for diplomatic talks rather than this kind of war exercises, war games they're doing.
South African Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gigaba has apologized to the nation for a leaked sex tape. He said the video is at the center of a number of blackmail and extortion attempts, dating back to the period he served as the country's finance minister. In a series of tweets, Gigaba said the footage was stolen from his phone when it got hacked in 2016. Syria has reopened its famous Damascus Antiques Museum 6 years after it closed doors due to the civil war. Only part of the collection will be immediately for displays for visitors. Museums across the country were closed a year after the civil war started in 2011 in order to protect artifacts from rebel rock fire. Authorities hid some 300,000 items in secret locations. Syria has more than 700 archaeological sites, but many have been destroyed or looted since the war broke out.
It was a hard work at the beginning of the events in 2012. The Syrian Directory of Antiquities put a strategy in place to protect the Syrian Museum. We emptied all museums in Syria and moved them to safe places. We faced big difficulties because of the events that most of the Syrian area suffered from, but we could save the majority of the pieces in the museum.
We come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories you can find at our website at telesurtv.net/English. And for our viewers in Africa, remember you can find us on the StarSat channel 461 in South Africa and channel 539 in Nigeria. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.